When I was young, I thought art was something for rich people. I never would have ever expected that I'd spend my life involved in it. A bunch of us used to hang out in this little storefront on the Lower East Side that, you know, we called it a gallery, but it wasn't really a gallery. It was more of like a party spot. And it was just a place where a bunch of different people who are into super creative stuff used to just come and hang out and get inspired by each other. And, you know, it was really just a bunch of like bored kids, like a bunch of dumb, bored kids. These people were speaking a language that was my language. It was like a language that you didn't have to be smart to understand, you know what I mean? All you had to do was have a heart, you know, and that was enough. I was always super inspired by that.
Every day is a brand new day. You can participate, or you can forget it. As far as I can see, this day was made for me. It's a brand new day. You can participate, or you can forget it. As far as I can see, this day was made for me.
Was anybody in your family an artist?
No. I have a painting from my grandmother that's really awful. It's great. She put ground glass in it to make the snow sparkle. It was like a woodland scene with a deer in it. It's really bad. I love it.
My first memory of creating anything is rabbit houses on a piece of paper. It was a green line with carrots that, you know, most of it was brown, and then a green line on the top and a little bit of blue, and then a tunnel, and then the different rooms of the rabbit's house.
I used to draw my toys all the time. These tanks I would draw incessantly, and war scenes, lots of war scenes, and I called World War II War II. So I had all these posters with World War II, you know, until someone told me it was World War II, and I was really devastated. I was really so embarrassed.
A pretty clear one is coming home from seeing Battlestar Galactica in the theater and drawing epic battle scenes. So it's like the ships were small, but then there's a lot of laser play.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be When I was a kid, I wanted to be a...
Most of my early years, I wanted to be a garbage collector. And actually, I made my parents take me and my friends to the city dump for my birthday. So, and they saved garbage. They saved garbage for like a month. And so we all had a bag of garbage to throw into the pile.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a conceptual artist.
I think as a child, you're always drawing, coloring, and doing crafts, and that is totally normal and seems to be like what you do as a kid. And I think what the kind of the weird tragedy is that when you become an adult, you grow up and lose that. You like stop creating. You stop just involving yourself in the joy of coloring and creation and stuff. And I just feel like I was lucky enough to never really lose that.
Everybody can make things with their own hands. It's just they can't always be looking for perfection. They have to allow themselves to make mistakes and to go with something that might be a little crooked or a little smushed. And people used to go with those things, and nowadays those things aren't beautiful anymore to people's eyes. I think it's the part that's off, that's interesting, that even if I spend a lot of time going over the line and over the line and trying to make it straight, I'll never be able to make it straight. And from a distance it might look straight, but when you get close up you can always see the line waver. And I think that's where the beauty is.
I am attracted to those places that don't seem important, or those things that seem off the grid. It's a horrible phrase. Like off the value grid. Like what's not valuable anymore actually seems like really rich to me.
We're right now in Dragon Park in Nashville, Tennessee. When we were young, or as teenagers, this was a place that most of like the losers would congregate, or the skateboarders, or the acid freaks, goths, punks, and now it's pretty much park for little children and slides, and it's a place for joy, I guess.
Come on, Grace.
I had a friend named Samuel who got his head cut off here. He was a pool shark and a delinquent, and I guess he had ripped somebody off or something, and someone severed his head with a switchblade, I think, and they found it in the center of the dragon. I guess it kind of changed the whole scene for a little while. I mean, these kids play where Samuel's head used to be, and like, they don't really even, they're not aware of it because it was like maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I guess that's a good thing, you know, because you can't really have a memorial to his head in this place. But yeah, it's strange how certain places have different memories for different people. Hey, how you doing? You know, we found my friend Samuel's head there back in '86.
Cool! Man!
Do you remember
Francisco, and every time we'd come through this tunnel, and there would just be this, it was a spray-painted image of a pig's face, and it was fuck cops on it. It was like an icon to me. I always, just every time I was like, there's that fuck pigs thing, you know. I had no idea what even a pig was or anything. It was just like, was this thing I always would look for, and it was just always there for year after year.
How old were you when you first noticed it?
9 or 10 or something. Right when you start figuring out things that are cool, or I don't know what cool is or anything, but it wasn't right. I knew that. It wasn't like a cool kid thing.
How did you learn about graffiti?
That tunnel thing was probably the first acknowledging of graffiti. And then there were some friends at the time that kept on talking about this spray can art that was going on in New York, and they're like, we all have to come up with names. So we all came up with names, and we used to go ride around on scooters and catch tags.
So you came up with your name around that time?
Yeah, I did. Worst name ever.
What?
Twist.
So much graffiti is kind of like 13-year-old boy, almost more like comic nerd, you know? And I don't even know if any of these guys actually look at comics, but it's like that kind of vibe. It's not like high art. It's more like of a popular art.
I think the basic tag and tagging on private property is, I like to think of it as something that's just like really political and just like antagonizing. It's not really that antagonizing. You get rid of it, you know, with a roller. It's not like, but I think the act in itself is antagonizing. It's communication, like on the simplest form. It's just communicating to other kids at a glance, you know? I mean, you could look at something for half a second and you know the style, the risks they took, everything, you know? It's all condensed into one 3.5-second movement, you know? That's what I like about it. It doesn't have any of the gross trappings of the art world or anything. It's just like a kid's tag is a kid's tag, that's it.
And I think like nerds are, like the dispossessed, do sort of inherit the creative earth, you know what I mean? If you're not dispossessed, why make art? You know? If you're not feeling pretty rejected and all that stuff, you probably just be a little bit more content and not have this need to save your life making something.
I knew I wasn't an insider, that's for sure. And, you know, I knew that feeling right away. You know, you figure that out pretty quick, like in public school systems, where you know the order of things or where you sit, or you know, I just always gravitated toward the other awkward kids. You know, the kids that were had birthmarks on their faces or whatever.
As a kid, you kind of gauge your life against your friends' lives. And because of that, I never complained about it. And then as you grow up, you kind of realize, like, in general terms, my life was kind of shitty. All my friends came from broken homes. All my friends' dads hit them and beat them and stuff. So I never felt like that's a very extraordinary thing. And probably in reality, it's not.
I was just pissed, you know? I was just pissed in general. Like, I came from a culture that the punk rock thing that really kind of nurtured being pissed, so like it was all right to be angry, and and it related to my frustrations in my life.
I got subcultural when I was like in 7th grade or something. That was really cool for me, super fun. To switch like positions, to go from being like a freak, just a regular freak, to being like a cool freak kind of. It's really nice.
When I got into high school, there were older kids there, and that was when I really discovered there was like a group of other kids who fucking hated life and hated school and hated parents. These are my real family. These are the people who I can kind of tell anything to. And it felt good, you know? It felt good, and it was sort of when I really felt like I started to figure out who I was as a person.
The first thing I believed in, probably as a total belief, is that when somebody was getting fucked with, that you should stand up for them, kind of. And I have done that and not done that for people ever since. I know that some people think it's dumb to even paint, but you know what? That's cool. Because some people think it's dumb to like do everything, you know? But to me, life isn't just about problems, you know, it's problematic. I'm a visual thinker, you know? And so to me, this is what I have to deal with. Other people, they figure out their ways to it, but I have to do this. This makes me feel good. I have to paint this just for this. But to me, that makes total sense. You know? But, you know, it's like, oh, wake up, pay the bill, make organic eggs, continue kissing my beautiful wife that I love. Take the dog out. Don't pee in the house. You know what I mean? Don't get killed by the car. You know, like, pay taxes. Get vibed by somebody on the street because they were having a bad day and you're in the perfect spot to get told fuck off. You know, just smile nicely at somebody.
Like, I've got like emails that are from fully like righteous Christian people who are like, I'm really feeling your work, which is totally like, which is gnarly, and I'm stoked on that. Like, I'm stoked. Like I got an email from someone who's totally like, I know that you're righteous. Like, they were talking in weird like religious people code of like, I know you're righteous and I know you're feeling the righteous word. You keep at it. Good work. Like, as if like I'm in on it. That you are totally like spreading the gospel through your work in like a secret way. So, and I was like, that's awesome. Like, this person has this whole thing with what I'm doing, and I can kind of see it. Like, there's some sort of like the vaguity of what I do. Like, it's like vague messaging where it's like, there's a kind of like positivity to it. There's these moments that like I try to create in my work where you kind of like lose yourself a little bit, where you are looking at something that's familiar but you don't know, and you have a relationship to it but you don't really know what that is, and then you're reading some piece of text that you're like is like telling you something, and I think like there's like spirituality in that in some way. I think there's this kind of like losing yourself and kind of like you know, you're changing your view on things a little bit, maybe.
I think like funny is one of the harder, more life-supporting, more punk things that you can do, you know? Like funny can be like the best sledgehammer, you know? And it's also like, why have cancer, you know? Why not be funny? You know what I mean? It's so much of of art or the shit that we're involved in is the angst, you know?
Okay, finish it, it's okay?
Yeah, finish it.
Yeah?
Yeah, we're good.
Finish it?
You know what? Take a tiny bit off the top. Just a little. Yeah. That's right. Now we're doing it, yeah. Powerful. But when I first came here in '89, I came over to Williamsburg Bridge. I was like, somehow I ended up in Brooklyn first, came over to Williamsburg Bridge. When I hit Delancey Street, the first thing I remember seeing was a cop car totally burned out.
Brakes on a bus, brakes on the car, brakes to make you a superstar, brakes to win and brakes to lose. But these here brakes will rock your shoes, and these are the brakes. Break it up.
And then we went to Tompkins Square Park, and every trash can in Tompkins Square Park was on fire. And I was like, I like this. This is what I'm talking about.
Say last week you made the perfect guy. He promised you the stars in the sky. He said his Cadillac was gold. But he didn't say it was 10 years old.
The only reason I came here, and the only reason I stay here, is it's the most amazing platform for like getting your point across and whatever you're doing, getting it out in front of people. This is like a really great mountaintop to yell your message from. It's like I roll out of bed and I just turn on the microphone and then suddenly I'm broadcasting to like 40 million people.
If your woman steps out with another man and she runs off to them to Japan and the IRS says they want to chat and you can't explain why you claimed your cat.
Every time I express myself in any format, there's a bit of subversion in it. You know, and the only subversive message I'm putting across is like, you can be you. You have the right to be exactly who you are. I have the right to be exactly who I am, unadulterated, and bring it to you raw, uncut. Most of what I did, I'm proud of. You know, I could stand up and look at most of the graffiti I did and feel like, yeah, I did it. Even if that's a perfectly pristine black spray paint tag on your immaculate white wall, it was well done. And the punchline after it was funny.
Yeah, in 1989, the city looked like a bomb had hit it, you know? In California, whatever, I found like a group of peers that were like me, but here, like everyone on the street was a freak, you know? If you were like 25 and under, you were fucking weird in this town. So it was like all of a sudden I moved to a whole country that was full of weirdos, you know? And it was like when I was 19, it really hit me really hard.
Like, in retrospect, it's interesting the stuff that I ended up being exposed to. Like, we were in a hotel room and we were about to go out to dinner, and I turned on the TV and Star Wars was on TV, which is super ultra mind-blowing. And I mean, I wasn't doing graffiti or anything, but it was just like, just the power of it, and then the colors, and like it was like 15 minutes of I just soaked in this other thing.
When I was like in 2nd or 3rd grade, they took 10 of us into this little room somebody was doing a study on kids' brains, and they taught us how to read one-line comics, and it, as soon as when they explained it and I understood it, changed it was like a synapse happened or something connected, and it changed everything.
The first thing I really got into creatively was my punk band. And I didn't take the art I was doing seriously at all. It was just this weird habit I had. And we would practice in the house, and my parents were really supportive. Like, they would come to our shows with aggression. My dad would be wearing the suit, my mom would be. And they'd come to almost every show, like at a little dumb house party or whatever. And it just made me hate them even more, that they were so supportive and actually kind of cool about it.
My whole school was rockabilly. And then, like, me and my two friends were punkers, and they'd be, like, the whole school would be like, let's rumble after school. And we'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, that's what? Like, go fight yourselves.
Violent kids, druggies, and stuff like that, those are the guys that basically I found the most interesting, and I have to imagine that they still exist today, but I just don't know where they are as much. But then again, I don't hang out with teenagers, except for these ones.
I'm living a moral life, you know? I'm living basically a Christian life right now. I'm not killing animals, I'm a vegan. I'm taking great precautions to be compassionate to all creatures on the earth. You know, faithfully married for 14 years. I run a business, and I go out of my length to not fuck people over and to do things that I think are, like, sound. I feel like I'm living a good moral life, a very strong moral life. Why would I not make it into heaven?
He was skating all day and he was super hot and sweaty, and so I offered to buy him a drink, and he was just about to take a drink of it, and his friend whipped it out of his hand and guzzled it all down. Like, he just looked up with those big green eyes, and I just thought he was so adorable. Then 2 days later we went on a date, and then 2 days after that became boyfriend girlfriend.
And how long ago was that?
Almost 18 years ago. And in my head, when he would shoot the photos and when we get them back before they'd show up on any wall, I just thought, this is going to be so much fun when we turn 70 or 80 years old to look back on, like, the way we looked, the way we loved. That's why I like the photos in the first place, just between him and I, like, not what anyone else is going to see or take away from it.
This is Hidden Valley. It's just a piece of land in the middle of the suburbs that's unused by the city, at least, but it's used by everyone else. Like, BMX kids come here and build these tracks, and homeless people live in here. There's, like, rope swings, and there's battlefields for paintball wars, and so it's just like a BMX paintball, you know, come here at night and have sex and smoke pot fest here. I bet there's some good stuff here. But at this point, I feel like a home invader, you know? Like, there's actually, obviously, people living here. Here's pretty much the center of it all. The rope swing area. Where many a kid's legs have been broken by letting go of the rope swing over the swamp. My knee's kind of jacked. I shouldn't do this stuff. skateboarding took over in my life. I mean, I turned pro and with a month left of high school and just got offered to go to Europe and took off.
It's skateboarding, man. Like, that's where all of this came from. Skateboarding is a very kind of rigorous movement. You have to like try and try and try, and then finally you get something. Nothing comes like that.
It's attracted so many creative people. You know, that's something I've really noticed. It's attracted a lot of like heroin addicts and creative people, and a lot of creative heroin addicts, a lot of boozers, juice heads, rapists, scum. It's like a magnet for that shit.
Skating back then was weird. People go like, that's retarded. You spend your time doing that? It's like, you hula hoop? You're a hula hooper? I'm gonna beat you up. That's what it was like. It was like, yeah, I'm a fucking hula hooper. I'm gonna leave school and go hula hoop for 5 hours. That's what I do. Girls aren't like, yeah, I want to bone the guy who hula hoops.
Like, the punk guys had so much time on their hands because there wasn't much to do if you were punk. So we'd go skating and they'd still be there, and then go back to where like the punks hang out, and they'd still have been there. And all they could do is like go to Dairy Queen.
I never really thought of skateboarding as a sport, you know? Now it's referred to as a sport. You see it on television. It always seemed to me like an art form. You know, there were no rules to it. It was almost like dancing. Skateboarders like Mark Gonzalez would maybe like attract, you know, another kind of skater. He interpreted skateboarding differently than what I saw most people doing. Just thinking about things in reverse, in terms of opposite. And so he was an artist skateboarder.
As a skateboarder, number one, he invented street skateboarding, and almost everything that everybody does today on a skateboard comes from Mark Gonzalez. It's derivative of something that guy did, which is just pretty amazing. And on top of that, his artwork, it was on that level too.
With Mark too, to me it's not so important the form, which is really freeing, like watching his stuff. It's not so important what it looks like or what it is, but it's like the ideas in it, or the spirit of it, or the kind of mental feeling. Like you feel like you're watching a brain working. It's more cerebral in a weird way, while not being like smart. Like geniusly dumb, you know?
The crossover between skateboarding, graffiti, surfing, maybe like punk rock, is that those are all groups of people that I don't think ever, they always were do-it-yourself people. And I think that's why they're interested in each other more than, maybe rather than anything more than that.
When I got out to New York, I looked at graffiti the same way that I looked at, punk rock art in LA. You know, it was like the total do-it-yourself art made by kids, no rules, not in the gallery, lawless art that inspired me.
What really got me into making art the way I make it now was, since there were no punk record stores, I couldn't buy a Sex Pistols shirt or a Clash shirt, so I started making my own t-shirts.
It's just from my experience in high school was always about a book. Like, these teachers had this book and they were teaching you the book. And I watched them, how they taught you the book. They make you read the book, and then they ask you questions about the book, and you get graded if you know a lot about the book. And so I was like, well, I can do this on my own. Like, if I just get a book on something, I can read it and learn it. There wasn't anyone telling me the right or wrong way to do a certain thing or to use a paint in a certain way. It just all came through making mistakes and messing up and learning it your own way, making sucky paintings.
What a tremendous act of faith it was for Ed Templeton to start painting. You know, what a tremendous act of faith it was for a lot of people to start painting just because they had to. You know, like, who would take Ed Templeton seriously when he started painting? Who would take Chris Johansson seriously when he started painting? Aaron Rosewood.
When you come from a culture that's like made by kids for kids, you don't think about, I can't do this. That's never really a question, you know, because there were no other options to get your information or to do things. You had to do it yourself because there was nobody else doing it. I didn't even know how an art gallery ran, you know, or what. I didn't even really know that it sold art. Nobody wanted to buy that art. Nobody cared. I was offered this storefront space, and it was just like a crash pad at first, but then the front of it had a window onto the street, and so we started talking like, yeah, we should do stuff with this thing, you know, because whatever, it'll be fun. And so we just started having like parties with art on the walls, basically.
And like every night drinking, or every night we would just show up at the gallery and bug Aaron, you know? And we were pretty stupid and great, you know, awesomely dumb, like awesomely not caring a fuck about our careers or anything like that. It was really about how to be less bored, how to do a lot for not a lot of money, and are there any girls around, and is there any stuff around that's cool to look at?
It was basically a hole in the wall. There was rats crawling around the walls, and the sink was moldy and gross, and he had like a little loft like that he slept in there, and it was just like crazy life, you know, like full, like dedicated to art life.
I was going to New York putting up posters and stickers and stencils, but I didn't know anybody really in New York. I didn't know anything about the scene, and when I went to Alleged, in the matter of like a night, I met all sorts of people that I'd looked up to. I just thought, well, that's like the New York phenomenon. You know, I kind of felt like I was just walking into like a Mick Rock photo of a party with Iggy Pop and Lou Reed and Andy Warhol.
I felt always like I was part of a larger thing that would encompass a lot of people. And all of those energies of all these individuals and all of their unique talents and unique contacts is what came together to make that thing happen.
It was fun to put your things in a venue and have a whole audience of people come and just purely go into your world.
I saw this once. My niece, she painted this great picture of a cow, and me and my sister were flipping out. Oh my God, that's so amazing. We framed it, we put it on the wall. What that did to her being was right before your eyes. She was just like a flower, you know, because she was encouraged, you know, and like to make more, you know, and you can take that same kid and go, yeah, thanks. And that kid's probably not going to paint another picture, you know, and that's what Alleged was. It was just like, you know, make some more, do some more, because it was the stakes. There were no stakes. There was no money. It wasn't about that, you know. It was just about making stuff.
You know, some people were making movies, some were drawing, some were painting, photographers, and, you know, people were in bands and stuff. I guess he saw a kind of correlation to what everyone was doing, and that there was a kind of relationship to it, and that, to my surprise, that maybe, perhaps there was even some kind of importance to that moment in time.
Sometimes I think hard about it, my poor lot in life, or if God thinks highly of me or not so much. I knew this one girl who, she told me about meeting Bruce Willis one day and asking for his autograph. And once I seen that guy, Phil Collins, buying a pair of cowboy boots, or I don't think that much the way a girl don't talk to me, or if she thinks something bad about me.
I mean, the reason I made movies is because no one else was showing me the types of things I wanted to see. You know, no one else was like creating the images that I wanted to see projected. So it's more like you just, you know, you want to see something, you make it. I mean, first and foremost for yourself and your friends, I guess, you know. And I guess if other people were doing it, I wouldn't do it.
is everything. Some say he's downright evil. He's got what it takes to be a legend. He's got a marvelous persona.
My aspirations as far as that goes, you know, doing humongous films and having big successes, I mean, it's never been important to me.
But don't look at anybody, only the dog.
As long as I can just keep doing what I want to do and creating the images that I have in my head, I think I'll be all right.
Well, in 1992, we did a show in the gallery called Minimal Tricks. That was a skateboard art show. Basically, like, I got in touch with some people and they sent me art and skateboards to hang on the wall, and it was, it was a pathetic show, you know? But I guess because no one had ever done that before here, and it was sort of like an oddity to New York, that whole culture or whatever, we got written up in Thrasher magazine. Because we got that right up a gallery in LA, read it, and... sorry. Yeah, we got that right up in Thrasher, and then a gallery in LA saw that article, and then they offered to bring that show to a gallery in Hollywood. And that was when it started to really, like, hit, where it's like, whoa, this is like what we're doing here, like people are into this.
So you go, skate art show. Of course there's a skate art show. And then from then on, it's just of course. Like, of course Juan Gonzalez has an awesome show and his art's awesome. Of course, like, Mike Mills has a show. But then it's almost like that stuff became kind of like of course to everybody. Then I feel like I gotta start paying more close attention because it was something you just kind of took for granted. And I think that, like, for a long time, like, I saw Thomas's work and I always knew about Thomas Campbell, but I never really knew exactly what it was like, you know, for like way longer than it should have been. And I felt like really uneducated, you know, like just not seeing a lot of the stuff.
What am I? I don't know. Whatever. Doodler. Filmmaker. In general, I like to be by the ocean, and this feels right, you know. It's what I'm from. I'm from it. You know, like, it's home. Like, some people need to be in cities and need, like, a lot of commotion around them to get inspired. No, I don't need that. Like, I'm inspired. Like, I want to make stuff wherever I am. I grew up in a place called Dana Point, which in the early 70s, it was kind of a very rural beach town in Southern California, right between Los Angeles and San Diego. And God, it was so beautiful. It was a gorgeous place. You could just walk in the hills for days. And then when I was about like 12, 13, like all the land movers came in, and by the time I was like 15 or 16, 17, it was just like no more nature as far as the eye could see, and it was just like shocking.
Growing up in the suburban domestic incubator and the subsequent paradigm shift upon exit, that's the text I have for it. It's like, you know, what happens when you leave it and you see the rest of the world, and you realize in looking back, like, where I lived was a big fake dream.
Alice, what are you doing?
Plotting my future. Hello? Hello?
That's sweet. Would you like another avocado sandwich?
The forecast mostly sunny skies today.
see any strangers, tell them I said hello.
In my family, it was never okay to be sad. To express sadness was a little illegal and also dangerous, you know, or dangerous to other people. And so didn't get to do it. So like, since art is getting to do what you didn't get to do, a lot of times my art is like sad, or like, you know, reveling in sadness. And often funnily sad, like, I'm gonna make this so sad it's gonna be silly, you know? But I'm exercising a lot of things I didn't get to say before.
What is happiness?
I can't really define it.
Being like a painter, being a straight white male artist, showing in galleries, showing in museums, all that stuff seemed like the most corrupt, the most duplicitous, the least powerful, the least punk, the least interesting thing to do. So I went to art school and just totally learned like how to dis-art, you know, and like not want to do it at all, or not want to be like a traditional artist. And then at the time, I remember graduating, like the idea of being like a painter or drawing or any of that stuff seemed like the most regressive thing you could do, you know? Like, the mainstream was like my first girlfriend that dumped me really hard, and I've never forgotten her. It's really embarrassing to admit, but it's kind of true. And I think that's why my work often relates to it. Even if I'm like poking at it or fucking with it, it's because I'm still in love with her and hate her. Feel jilted, you know? So next question.
Leaving the suburban environment and coming to the city was what I was looking for in life was a real experience, because I felt like I grew up in a fake world, and that's what the city was offering me.
Kids came here because it didn't cost anything and they could live in some shitty squat and not have a normal job and just make art, and that's why so much amazing stuff happened here.
On Halloween night 1997, we opened a huge group show called The Independents. The idea behind it was to spotlight all these artists that I thought were like the coolest artists working at that time. And by this point, there was a little bit of momentum was starting to build around some of these artists. Certain artists had started to have shows like in sort of more real establishment galleries.
The first time that I really felt like it really come together and there was kind of a real kind of group feeling, it was when he did the Independent show.
People met each other and friendships were formed during that time because everyone was working together, you know, under this roof like 24 hours a day for a week, making something happen.
It's just fun, you know? It's fun to be a kid and making junk.
Maybe one of the things that you'll find is for that moment in time there was, I wouldn't say an innocence, but I'd say that there were people having fun, enjoying each other's company, coming up with different ideas, trying to create something, you know, inspiring one another, maybe just kind of enjoying themselves, messing around.
All the artists came in costume, and I mean, half the crowd that was there at the gallery was in costume. It was like a psychedelic night. It was like really just crazy. It was really beautiful out that night, I remember, and it was magic. It was the first time you could see artists who were starting to really come into their own.
It just felt like, okay, this is a good up to bat.
The work looked somewhat professional for the first time. That really looked like an art show. That was the first time that I had done anything in New York with Barry and Margaret, and they didn't have anywhere to stay, and they had sleeping bags, and they just slept right next to their pieces in sleeping bags. I even offered to like put them up in a hotel, and they were like, no, it's cool, we'll just sleep in the gallery.
The waterbed Lou, and then every time he originally wrote it in '85, and then he came past it again in '91, and then he came past it again in '92. So every time he goes past it, you update your signature.
Hi. We're really interested in the like the really old hobo stuff from Train Marker.
What?
Like the waterbed Lou. There's like a guy with a hat, and he's got a profile.
I haven't noticed any of that. I've been checking these cars for I don't know how long.
Really?
I haven't noticed that. No, I haven't.
Like a lot of like this old stuff, it used to be hobos, but now a lot of it's train workers or some tramps, but I think, or I think also loaders, like people who...
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I started in '93, riding on trains. The thing that really fascinated me about the trains is it seems very much about folklore, and it looks like it's not supposed to be continuing in this day and age, and yet it's thriving.
Maybe somebody will be inspired by the fact that, you know, especially, you know, women, that another woman is working hard, but just to see somebody working hard. In general, I don't care if I inspire men or women.
I hope that by showing my work anywhere I happen to show it, that I always hope there's somebody that can come away feeling like they can work too.
The first time I saw Margaret Kilgallen's art, I measured everything else that I ever saw again after that against it.
She had this image she was doing, and I just walked in, and I was just like, got all like quiet, and I was just like, wow, this is like, oh, that's a good one, that's a good one. I was to myself, and then I was just like, Margaret, I'm gonna go back to my studio and do exactly what you just did. So I think we influence each other like that. We'll start out like doing something, but then all of a sudden it turns into something fun and interesting.
I think everyone jives off of everyone, you know? It's a very, you know, it's kind of a whirlpool of inspiration.
But I do feel a relationship between my work and other people's work, for sure, that I love. I don't feel like alone, talking like a foreign language.
I don't draw drawings for hours or days or any of that stuff. Like most of my stuff is actually executed in a matter of minutes. I most trust things that come like that. I'm wary of my involvement in my artwork.
It's like,
you know?
when you get clouded and you're like wondering what to be doing, if you make it and it's something that you want your friends to see and it'll make them laugh.
It's all exploration, like emotional or spiritual or whatever. It's just like you're going for it. You know, that's the role of the artist. The artist's role is to like,
and it's chaos, and kids like chaos. When I'm a kid, I want to see chaos. I'm into chaos. I want
We're the first, you know, even if those of us with education, man, we're kids, man. Our work is in the vernacular of like, you know, speaking in the way that we spoke as youth. Our concerns are the same as like every kid in America's, man. We had the same thing.
It's just something like, you know, it's the only thing I ever wanted to do. So it was really just something that I just was like, I'm gonna do it. You know, I'm gonna make movies. There was just really no second choice for me. There was just nothing else. I was interested
I find
in.
inspiration from what I see on the streets and what I see on the trains, and I learn from that.
If I'm pretending I'm talking on a telephone and writing on a phone booth, like 3 blocks later I'm in a gallery painting, it's exactly the same thing to me. I think it all references each other and influences each other.
I didn't work. I only made art for a lot of years. I really starved sometimes. Lived on apples and stuff.
I like that it's kind of mindless, but it's not, because you never can draw the same thing over and over again. I like thinking about the fact that somebody will think that that is burnt to do that. Like, that's all that he does, because it's not all I do, but I like the idea that somebody thinks that that's all that he does. What a burnout artist. That's such bullshit. And then I'm all, yeah, and then, you know, just be all, yeah, this is so non-growth, you know, over and over again. I like that. To be, you know, to be a professional artist or whatever is a weird thing to say and to, I guess, be. I just have no illusions. The world is, you know, it's all nothing. You know what I mean? It's like all such nothing. Like money's funny money. Like popularity, it just goes, you know. You look at bands, it's like, this band is so popular, they're awesome. And then like 2 weeks later, the kids, or like a year and a half later, the kids hate that. They hate it. They rebel against it. They hate it. They think you just are shit. You know what I mean?
Oh, God, they're off the streets finally. They're in the gallery. Finally. Now I'm doing canvases and making a living like it's controlled, and there's something about that I do have problems with. That mentality is a little bit off to me. I'm not so fond of that idea. And I'm always wary of how I sit in the eye of like a 12 or 13-year-old kid. Like, what do they think of what I've done and whatnot? So I'm super wary of like how I fit in that whole scheme of things.
I think there's an attitude difference between what's done inside and what's done outside. As an artist, you want to be able to sell your work, and you want to be able to live off your work, and that world that involves the art buying and selling is a very closed world, and sometimes you forget about the other world around you. Any day in the Mission in San Francisco, you can see a hand-painted sign that is kind of funky, and maybe that person, if they had money, they would prefer to have a neon sign. But I don't prefer that. I think it's beautiful what they did, and that they did it themselves. And doing community art sort of keeps you in touch with where you're from, where I'm from.
You know, by this point, quite a few of the artists had gained some pretty significant success in the mainstream world, and there were a lot of fans there. Even if it wasn't all in the art world, there were a lot of young fans, and you know, you'd show up to an art opening and there would be huge art collectors there and museum curators, and you know, there were reviews in the New York Times and magazine covers, and you know, it definitely wasn't just for kids anymore.
I started doing shows, funding the entire thing myself, all out of my own pocket. And then you get offered bigger shows at bigger places, let's say a museum, and you get kind of pampered. I mean, they fly you out and they ship the art on their dime, and they put you in a hotel on their dime, and they take you out to dinners, and they, you know, if you say you want the place painted, it's painted when you get there.
It's so clear, you look at it just like it's breathing, it's living, it's got a pulse, and it's fresh and it's new, and it's not a gimmick, it's not a fucking phase, it's not a fad. For it to grow up and be large, it's going to need many, many, many more people to kind of feed the organism and make it grow.
It's what I do as a living now, and it's like a period of time going into a space and just given like, okay, you have a month, here's the space, do it, and if I'm not told what to do or told that it has to fit with the theme of the building or whatnot, if that's not there and whatnot, it's a great opportunity for sure. They pretty much let me run around wild and free for like a month, and then I stop and that's it.
You know, there's ways to be the Beatles, to have the smartest guy in the room and the dumbest guy in the room digging what you're doing, and to have it affect people on multiple levels. I mean, it's not easy, but I think, you know, to aspire to that is noble. There's no difference between commercial art and fine art in terms of aesthetics. It's just intent. You know, freedom of the press is guaranteed to those who own one. You can make something seem a lot bigger than it really is. When people see it out under its sticker, they're wondering what it is, and then they ask someone else and it gains power from perceived power. I'm so into propaganda art and pop art because that art is designed to stop you in your tracks, get your attention. Then once it's got its hold on you, deliver some sort of message. I mean, advertising is the same way.
As like a weird game, I would take the work I was doing for an art show and I would do stuff for clients that was just like it. Just as a weird test to myself of like, I'm gonna do something that I think is awesome. Instead of trying to like please what they were saying, like I'd go and I'd meet with them and I'd listen to everything they were saying, but then I would just take something that was exactly what I was doing in the artwork and give it to them, and that was the stuff they were like, that's awesome. Like that stuff totally flew.
I put a Barry McGee bottle outside, I turn my back for 1 second, I think it's gone. So does that speak to the power of the work? Does that speak to longevity? I don't know. It speaks to connecting. It speaks to like the most rare thing in this world today, and that's connecting. You know, that's why the companies are coming at us. That's why the companies are handing us money. That's what they want. You know, and that's what they can't have from me anymore. I'm done.
I just don't like it, you know? I don't like not like the person.
I like old advertising that's not trying to get you to do anything anymore. That can't.
That look, that you, it's so.
That doesn't. You're not going to buy like a weird typewriter from the 70s.
The first venues for most of these artists' work was through commercial products. Skateboard designs, t-shirt designs, sticker designs. So it's not that foreign of a concept for these artists to be creating commercial products from their work, because that was actually happening before the art world thing.
I got a lot of emotional fuel out of being successful in that world. And like, knowing that my stuff was going out on that big of a level, internationally, everywhere, it made me feel valuable. And this is all just interpersonal family shit. Me yelling back at my parents that I'm okay, you know, that I can do this shit, you know what I mean? And once you realize that, yeah, it's a little disenchanting, to say the least. But I realized that. It was like getting back at all the tan, blonde motherfuckers who wouldn't talk to me.
The people who are in the boardrooms and advertising agencies are our peers now, you know? They're the guys who are running the creative departments at skateboard companies. They've just grown up. They moved from that, you know, now they're not doing skateboard companies anymore, they're doing Pepsi campaigns.
game. Like, this is the game. Are you gonna decide like you're playing the game or not playing the game? Like the pressure, you can't even believe. It's gonna be huge. It's gonna be on every street, it's gonna be on every billboard. One of the biggest agencies, one of the biggest clients in the world, and there's me. I found myself multiple in a situation of like, let's work with Jeff McFetridge. So it'd be not in their interest to change, for me to change what I'm doing. Like everything that people say to me, especially when it's working with agencies or larger clients, is like totally do it like Jeff way. You're always testing the limits. I think it's like, of my friends, I definitely watch very closely with the Pepsi stuff of how my friends reacted. And you know, I got a really like positive response from people. Like people felt like good about it, and people who were fans were like, that's so rad you did that. Like, that's so good, man, you got over it. And maybe that's because I've been really, I would hope that it's because I've tried to remain pretty like responsible in what I do.
I have a strong social conscience, and I think about politics in the world. Like this piece here is it is the Palace of Soviets. You can't tell right now, with Lenin on top of it, and it is it's this giant, like the Statue of Liberty is supposed to be that big. It's going to be the most giant structure, monument to Soviet power ever. And this is the King of Ga, the Kingdom of Ga's king's palace, back just like in the 1700s. It's like African nation that was slave trading, and this is the Republic of Texas, the capital of the Republic of Texas, and they're all these super intense monuments to these political entities that failed, that didn't happen, that spent blood and soil and earth and rock to build themselves up huge, and then history just keeps going on. I just think that's a really interesting thing about humans and the way we structure ourselves over and over again. But it's just all nothing and all the same as everything else.
The best venue is still always the street. Be a tag on the corner can communicate the same thing I just did at Deitch, you know?
Barry started getting shows in like 93, 94, and by 95 it was like really cooking. And by 98 he's at Deitch. You know what I mean? Like all those doors were like open, the lights were on, everything was there. I just had to go in and set up shop.
I'm wary of like this idea of you have to get bigger, more exposure, a bigger audience. It's all bullshit to me too. What's so great about that, you know? Everyone's sister and uncle like wearing a Keith Haring t-shirt. Wow, this is great. What a great accomplishment, you know?
I think it's inevitable, really. It seems like if you look at like everything that is once underground becomes celebrated at some point.
I had started to lose artists to other galleries. A lot of my motivation was to build a space that could compete on the same level as any other gallery in New York, so that the artists that I was working with wouldn't go to other galleries because this gallery was just as good. It was really expensive and really hard to manage, and I started to go into debt, and I would show up to work and not know if there was going to be an eviction notice on the door, if we were going to have power, if we were going to have phones, any of that, but at the same time we just kept busting out these like awesome shows. So I had a real big chip on my shoulder about what I was capable of and that I could compete with the big boys, and you know, got myself into some serious trouble trying to do that.
In 2001, this company chose a group of artists to go to Tokyo, paint work, put on shows, put a name on them, market it, t-shirts, buttons, posters, whatever. Market it as a phenomenon.
I just piled in every camera I had in like a huge suitcase full of film and went there, and like I didn't know what was going down, but I just knew that I had to get as much footage as possible. The promoters had the artists do t-shirt designs, and then they financed them to have simultaneous shows like all over the city and encouraged us to be as nuts as possible. I decided to make this film about Tokyo as a sort of time capsule for this group that had started from nothing really and had gained all this international acclaim by this point.
In Japan, where everything's a little more hyper and a little more intense and a little more real, this thing was a bonfire. Like, this thing got out of control and got so big so fast.
We all got handed an envelope with, you know, $1,000 in it, and they're like, here, tell us when you need more. And it was like every couple of days we get another grand, you know, to spend, and we're just like blowing through it like that.
It's not like, you know, our hosts were upset with any of this. They were loving it. They were encouraging us. How much did you steal today? They just invented the myth, perpetuated the myth, encouraged us to be the myth.
Barry had taken one of the cars that he had used in the Demolition Derby and was driving it around on the streets. It was like his vehicle to get around Tokyo. And we were in the back seat. It was like Barry and maybe like Ed or Thomas was in the front seat, and me and Margaret were in the back seat. And I remember Barry driving really, really crazy, like maybe driving up curbs and stuff, and Margaret just tripping out. She had to go home because she said she wasn't feeling well. And I didn't know what that meant. I thought maybe she had the flu or something like that. I had no idea that she was pregnant. Barry knew, but they were very private people, you know, and so she left. And, you know, he found out later, of course, that she was not only pregnant, but also very sick. The doctors had told her that if she wanted to fight the cancer, she would have to give up the pregnancy. And Margaret wasn't willing to do that. She had her baby. She gave birth to a beautiful daughter, but a couple weeks after that, she was gone.
At some point, something opened up in her and just, you know, released this like huge ball of energy that I think is still going. I think that energy is still rolling.
Margaret, it's like someone who made a whole world. And you feel like you're watching like this little inventory that she kept making. There's the woman, there's the bird, there's the tree with the leaves, and it kind of just kept growing, you know?
They're these awesome girls, and they're skater girls, and they make videos and make zines, and I think Margaret's like one of their flagship people, you know? And it's just rad to see that, like see this whole, like a whole new underground movement of like females, like using what, like her tracks that she laid down and like going with it.
Yeah, she pedaled to the metal the whole way, start to finish. No regrets at all.
When I get down and don't feel like doing art and I feel like giving it up, then the thing that keeps me going is the fact that maybe somebody will learn from what I'm doing. I know supposedly artists do their work for themselves, and yet when you put your work out there and somebody comes up to you and thanks you for doing it, and especially when young people come up and thank me, that is why I do work.
Is a dream that I see, I pray it can be across the land, shape this land, a wish or a command. A dream that I see, don't kill it, it's free. You're just a man, you get what you can. We all do
Killing the Island project that we did down here, you know, was inspired by Margaret. My idea of painting signs was like this completely selfish thing. It was just like, yo, I'm gonna put my name in the spot. People won't really know it's graffiti. It'll kind of catch them by surprise and I'll be long gone. Whereas Margaret said, no, it can be public service. And so that in itself is a spark that, you know, set off 1,000 other revolutions. First mine and now every other kid that's like thinking of it and doing it. For me, it's like being able to paint like a really good balloon game sign is like as great of a task as I've ever been given. Painting the Cyclone was probably the best thing I've ever done. You know, as far as like having a project and doing something, it's just like, it's so incredible. Like I have this thing that's seriously a part of 8 million New Yorkers' lives. You know, it's something everybody thinks of fondly, even if they broke their back on the friggin' thing. And you know, I got to paint it. I want people to see it, I want them to respond to it, I want them to like feel like it's theirs and it belongs to them. I used to want them to believe, oh, that's Steve's, and that belongs to Steve, and I recognize that as Steve's work. Now I see the real power in them saying, no, that's mine.
You gotta like just don't, I think you just gotta like get scarred. I think, I mean, I'd rather have scars than live a totally bland life, you know what I mean? So I don't care, I mean, I don't care if I have brain damage right now. I mean, I've had an awesome life.
The gallery and my entire being were so inextricably linked. You know, like it was such a part of my personality at that point that closing for good meant death to me because it was the death of my identity. There's something about losing it all and having to start over again and then realizing that like you're not really starting over again, you're just editing out all the crap that was holding you back. Now in retrospect, I look back on that as like maybe one of the greatest gifts I ever got in my life.
Your life perspective changes dramatically, and life is just so different than what you thought at 18, you know what I mean? So part of it is that, like your epistemology just completely changes, and who knows what's good and bad and right and wrong. And are you healthy? Yeah. Are you breathing? Yeah. Okay, let's go to work.
It's a family, you know, like when we come together and we make the big shows, it's super nice. It's nice to be older, actually, because when you're young, you're trying to find your voice, and it's a little, you know, people get lapped over and you get kind of like, dude, you're biting my shit. Now it's like, I think everyone's kind of like just doing what they do, and it's fun.
We've been through so much together, and that's invaluable, you know, and it's way more important than a lot of the other things in this world that are supposed to be important, you know, and I hear it all the time. It's like, man, we've known each other a long time, you know? Like I hear that from different artists all the time. Man, it's amazing how long we've known each other, you know? And that's important. I mean, in the end, that's all you got, you know? When you die, that's all you got are your friends. You know what I mean? You can't take your money, you can't take your fucking press, you know, you can't take your cars, you know, but you can take love.
If you really feel something, you know, if there's something really inside you, and it's important, it's almost a duty to tell your story in a different way and to present your vision.
I would hope it would inspire people to just like go out and do things and make freedom up on their own, you know, their own idea of freedom.
Ambition is such a funny thing. It doesn't look that fun, and the success is won by fighting and trying to be on top. I don't know, it doesn't look that great. Art making is rad. Really fun to sit in the studio, for sure.
In titling the show Beautiful Losers, that gave it a label, and now people are like, oh, you're a beautiful loser. Well, you can't tag me as a one thing or another. You can't tag almost anybody in the show as just a painter, as just a photographer. We're just artists.
I'm going to consider the interview starting right now. And everything before this moment to not be a part of it. Okay. I'd like that to not be on the in the film, because I take myself really seriously.
To be able to look into the eyes of people who are coming to experience things that people are making, and to see that like look of wonder or that feeling of love and excitement and inspiration that happens when there's openings or when things go on, that just make me feel like, wow, this is all worth it.
Hopefully it helps them to smile or laugh or feel something that maybe they weren't feeling, and hopefully enhances their life. But I don't know, man. We're all just gonna be fucking dust anyway.
Anybody watching stuff like this or like reading things in magazines, it's good to like see people, be open to different people, be influenced. I think having heroes is wildly important. Or to be able to say like, that work is rad, to not be like, oh, that work sucks all the time, which at least in art school you get trained to do. Everything's shitty, nothing's good enough. I think it's so much more empowering to be like, that is rad, I love that, I wish I did that. You know, I think that's really just important to do. But so it's good to be open like that, but it's really important, especially if someone's on camera or someone's wearing a suit or someone's making jokes or someone's in a magazine, don't fucking believe a word they say.